And no story is a story without hope. This story is about the mix of misery and finding hope while drowning in disappointment. We're here with another wannabe hero and his dream of becoming an adventurer. What if his dream turns upside down and we do not see a hero-oriented tale, but someone who rules the underworld and punishes the centers? Will our hero Chum be able to maintain his innocence while navigating the dangers of the underworld? Our story starts with a view of each city in our country where a boy is Roy. Riding a scooter somewhere. We know there are myriads of professionals in this world, but we all want some glorifying profession that brings not only fortune, but also dignity and honor to our name. Our guy wants the same thing. Our dreamer thinks that working hard is not the only factor for success. There is another thing called background. No doubt nepotism is going to take three thing now. He stands in front of shining armor, which makes us think that the guy wants to be a knight in shining armor. Looking at the armor with wishful eyes, he remembers how he has always hoped to wear it one day. This gear has attracted him. Every time he passed by this way, he knows he is not yet capable of becoming an adventurer, but he has confidence in his hard work to make it happen one day. After a while, he has seen studying some new products with attributes that enhance resistance to magic and a sleeker design. It's a kind of magical model, and he ponders how the new version is not very different from the previous one. As the damage reduction rate could still reach up to 15%, the next scene shows a man who looks like he's had a masterclass in snobbery, with his assistant by his side. Apparently this dude with a big attitude is a guild master, and his assistant tells him there's a mountain of adventure applications they need to go through once they are back at the guild. The man barely glances up and snarks that these are just above of losers who failed everywhere else, and are now trying their luck with his guild. He tells his assistant to reject all of them, dismissing them as nothing but trash. Then a sales girl informs the snobbish man about the new products they have received, offering to show them to him. He accepts with the same attitude, adding how precious his time is and how he needs to get through it quickly. Then he is in front of numerous gears that are considered to be the best products. The woman informs him about the latest edition, which is specially designed to withstand harsh environments. She points out that one of them is made to endure toxic and cold conditions. Meanwhile, our dude is also passing through the same path where this cocky and busy guy is inspecting the gears. He asks about and more products, but his eyes are soon drawn to Chang, who is not only keenly observing the items, but also taking notes. He asks the sales girl if our guy is a reporter. She dismisses the idea, saying he's just a guy who often comes here to look at things, but doesn't have a penny to afford them. He only looks, never buys. The man stares keenly at our hero, forgetting that staring he is rude. He then quickly activates appraisal skill, and can see that our boy is just a level 3 adventurer with 0 dungeons cleared. His intimidating presence startles Chun. He comments nonchalantly that our dude seems like a level 3 adventurer, and rudely asked to see his notes. He seems to lack basic manners, or believes the world belongs to him. Arrogantly he adds that our boy is just writing the pros and cons of the gears like a simple housewife. He then taunts him while suggesting that since he can't even complete a simple dungeon task, he shouldn't be coming to places like this. In other words, he indirectly tells him that he doesn't deserve to be there. He continues to taunt him while saying how their taxes are feeding useless and jobless people like our hero, who was looking at him nervously. Then our boy politely asked the snobbish villain to let him pass. This person, furious, tries to pull him by his shirt, as if our hero is obligated to listen to him. He truly believes the world revolves around him, and that people like our MC should stop whatever they are doing to listen to him first. On the other hand, Chun wants to avoid this manner all costs to avoid causing trouble. However, the man is not only snobbish, but also stubborn and spoiled, demanding to know how this brat became a level 3 adventurer without clearing a single dungeon. This question arises in our minds as well. Let's see how our hero achieves this without clearing any dungeon. He jerks off his arms from his shirt while saying that he has an allergy. A reaction from the magic, however, the snobbish person manifests magic in his hand. The statement of Chun infuriates him without any apparent reason, so he is manifesting arm equipment magic in his hand, while anger shows on his face. With that, he punches him harder, knocking him down. He arrogantly mutters how someone as weak as him could be so arrogant. He also adds, it's as if giving advice for the guy to work hard and clear some dungeons in order to raise his status in society. Instead of being useless trash, he takes it a step further, threatening to report Chung to the association for entering the 67th portal at such a low level. Clearly reveling in his own self-importance, he suggests Chung must be a spy, and hence that reporting him might even score a reward. A third, the smirk on his face, shows he's far too pleased with his wild accusation. After witnessing everything, the salesgirl rushes to Chan and asks about his well-being as she sees his nose bleeding. Not only this, our snobbish villain just has to squeeze in one more empty threat, vowing to report him again if our boy dares to show his face. All this despite the fact that the mighty end of it. You will already made it abundantly clear that there's no actual grudge between them, but naturally that's not enough for our self-important antagonist. He then swivels arrogantly toward the salesgirl and demands to know about some new products. After all, he's in a hurry, you know, because being this insufferable takes up a lot of time, but she is concerned about our hero while he shakes off her concern while silently moving ahead. After a while, he's outside the shop, determined to buy the same gear that the snobbish guy was looking at. Maybe it is his way to console himself, agree getting a good beating and taunting. Despite this, he also feel relieved that he didn't cause any trouble, as the guy seemed to be from some big guild. He finally introduces himself as Chun, an adventurer without a profession in this world, having the title of adventurer, but no profession means you're meaningless, like a book without a theme. Now it's time to open up the story of our main character, Coop Chum. Let's start from the beginning. The story begins on the day when this world first saw strange portals opening up. The experts of that time began researching these strange portals and collecting data. In the beginning, things were peaceful as only a few monsters were seen coming out of these portals. Suddenly, after a while, the number of monsters increased and the world found itself in a dire situation. In order to tackle this crisis, many countries formed a united military force to fight against these monsters, but after some experimenting, when they realized that modern weapons were useless against these unfathomable monsters, now the military force wants to try this nuclear power. But before they can do it, salvation comes in the form of people with supernatural power. During the battle, these people are called adventurers. After discovering their relationship with the emergence of the monsters from those portals, it's as if destined. He is giving the problem and the solution at the same time. Consequently, Chun's world sees a new profession, which is called an adventurer. People can easily acquire this profession after their first kill of a monster. In other words, like someone in RPG games requires a power or reward, it's the same case in the reality of our boy's world. In Chun's case, fortunately or unfortunately, he also gets some very rare odds. Instead of higher rewards, he gets the profession, but his body was not withstand with the magic to obtain this profession. In this new world where monsters roam free, it turns out the real stars aren't the ones fighting for survival, but those with a natural flair for monster slaying. They're raking in fortune and fame. A practically walking red carpets, with swinging swords, becoming the new idols everyone worships. On the other hand, those with average talent must working their tails off just to scrape by, because apparently, even in a world full of monsters, mediocrity still pays minimum wage. In this way, the guilds hunting for talent also prefer those with higher levels of talent. Thus, these highly talented people get everything besides having power and money. Consequently, ordinary people without talent are pretty much left to rot, as if the monsters aren't enough of a problem, and those unlucky enough to come from poor backgrounds. And not only this, they've got the added bonus of being devoured by the big fishes in order to survive. However, they also get an opportunity from the powerful, but our intelligent boy is not so certain about it. While thinking all of this mess-up system of his world, he is now somewhere in an abandoned building district, looking around at people who are all at level 20. While noticing this, he wonders whether they are going to face a dangerous portal, since most of the adventurers gathered there are at higher levels. Meanwhile, someone calls for him. It is his uncle Jen Chunhao, and Yuza. He is surprised to see the latter person. Yuza remarks how he couldn't refuse to come when he was getting some work. He also informs Chun about the mission they're going to work in a level E dungeon, but he doesn't know the reason behind so many level 20s. Humming there, Chun is surprised to hear this, as he expected they would face at least level C or higher. After witnessing the level 20 adventurer present there, he retorts that if that were the case they wouldn't be called, as they are just level 10. Then, while pulling his book out of his bag, he replies that he might get some interesting input from it. Someone interjects, commenting on Chun taking out his precious notebook. It's the same salesgirl we have seen before. Her name is Shot Tyne. At that, she against dresses or point about Chun taking notes, saying they won't get any valuable items from the dungeon, so she finds it annoying that he's bothering with notes. He explains that it's not about the drop items, but that it will be helpful and the dungeon, as he is taking notes on the minerals and ecological systems of the place. She retorts that they aren't going deep into the dungeon anytime soon because of their lower level, so she concludes his efforts are useless. He remains detached, not agreeing with her. He thinks these things will be useful since they don't know what they'll face in the dungeon, so it's better to know as much as possible. Besides, the biggest reason he puts in this effort is that he wants to become an adventurer one day. He wants to be someone who will plunder dungeons and use the significant information. At this moment they noticed someone's presence behind them, and it's none other than that snobbish guy with the arrogant face decked out in fancy equipment. The chain grows tense recognizing him from the store, but still doesn't understand why he's there. That so-called young master tells a female adventurer to pick one piece of equipment from the warehouse, along with the others, as he is satisfied with their performance. Last time she complies, and thanks him like a good subservient. On the other side, Chung tries to slip away before this young man. A master can spot him, but unfortunately, the guy notices him, and grabs him from behind. He deadpans how he warned him not to show his face again, or else he'd kill him. Our petrified hero snaps out of his state, and angrily jerks his hand away, stating how it's none of this so-called young master's business where he goes. This infuriates the young master, and he knocks Chung down, putting him in as place. Not only this, he angrily shouts that someone as low as Chung should be grateful, since he is their work provider. Cruelly he jerks our boy by the hair, arrogantly emphasizing that he's at the top of the food chain, and no one's going to stop him from killing him. Besides, the great and mighty master is apparently being merciful by sparing Chung's life while he brags about his merciful nature. Chung coughs up blood from the beating he's receiving. Now our guy finally realizes this man is none other than their job client. By this time others are drawn to the scene. Some ask the young master to let Chung go, while others wonder if it's right for a client to treat his subordinates this way. Hearing the murmurs of the crowd only adds fuel to the young master's ego. Fuel old firestorm, and naturally he lashes out by literally throwing fire at the onlookers. After all this drama he laughs it off, saying it was just a joke, claiming he slipped because he held Chun's hand for too long, like because who hasn't accidentally set people on fire during a friendly handshake after witnessing everything the association officer warns him about. If pulling such hilarious pranks in front of association safety officers, noting it could cause him trouble in the future. But predictably the young master is far too engrossed in his self-importance to care, laser focused on the far more pressing matter of making Chun's life miserable as his mission. The downside of all this drama is that the main character Chun, and approving the so in a Bushli Haitian's point, he really is the useless person she, and claims he is, while Xian taunts our boy's courage for having such lofty dreams of becoming an adventurer despite being useless trash. Our dreamer remains on the floor, as he is too weak to stand. With a taunting smile the bully expresses how sorry he is that someone like RMC is a lie. I've with such a pathetic life. Finally, she and deadpan, suggesting maybe he should help our pathetic hero regarding this matter. Afterwards, he turns his attention to the beautiful association officer, and with a smirk asks her to join him for a drink. She politely declined, clearly not falling for his charm. Offensive. On the other hand, Job immediately rushes to Chun to check on, as well being a spectator who might belong to C and Guild. Comments how the president really has a peculiar habit of using someone as a cautionary tale. It's like he's got a personal mission to remind everyone of their place. She and passes near that person and asks him about his usual special favor, leaving everything to him, which he complies with gladly. Another bald captain instructs everyone to get inside the dungeon. He informs them about the current situation of the dungeon, as they have detected the power level of the dungeon as level he and cleared out the dangerous monsters inside it. Now lower level adventurers, especially those from level 3 to 5, can enter without worrying about danger. She asks again about our guy's well-being. He tries to assure her that he's fine while his mind is focused on the mission. The mission involves entering the dungeon, or rather the portals that open to another world. These portals emit magic that helps determine the level of danger the dungeon holds, which is further divided into levels A to E depending on the magical value emitted. Our weak guy has only handled dungeons of lower level. So basically this mission is about collecting minerals, as the dungeon is level he, and they are not there to clear it of monsters. He looks at the other adventurers, who are usually below level 10, just like him. They're the crammed, the crime of failure, all cast out from the dazzling world of high stakes, adventuring. These minor opportunities, like their car a mission or their only chance to enter the dungeon. After they finish their work, the portal will close automatically. However, the downside of these jobs is that they won't get their hands on valuable items, as all the valuable dungeon treasures and boss loot are reserved for their oh-so-lucky client. Our main character Chung is quite unfortunate to be born in this world that glorifies adventure. years he has a special kind of illness or allergic reaction to magic. Whenever he has direct contact with any kind of magic, he suffers from intense pain. However, he endures it to survive in this world. After a while, he enters the Tower of Forgetfulness. As soon as he steps into the portal, he starts to bleed badly. His friends rush to him, concerned about as can. And as he stands there, one adventurer muses about how he's a rare specimen of the abandoned adventurer. Another remarks mockingly that people like our hapless dreamer with such rare diseases make excuses about not reaching higher levels due to their illness, otherwise they would have soared higher. Chum wears a sorrowful expression while listening to this, though he should be huge. It's to the cruelty of this world by now. Anyway, they all get back to work, as that is their goal for coming here. She looks around to find him and spot him in the corner working. His uncle and friend also look at him with concern as he has just pooped blood and is now working furiously. His friend then asks his uncle about the meaning behind abandoned adventurer. His uncle explains that it is a rare magical disease and which adventurers can't use skills, fight, or react to magic. It usually awakens during the awakening ceremony of an adventurer and accompanies them as they level up. It has different levels from a mild allergy level to something severe, sometimes even leading to organ damage. They even have a chance to die during combat because their bodies can't bear the magic. That's why they are called abandoned adventurers. It is revealed during his awakening ceremony that he is gifted with this magical disease, also known as magical intolerance. While looking at him, his uncle remarks how Chum could be quite powerful because he has collected small amounts of experience while going through dozens of dungeons. Meanwhile, our poor guy himself thinks about how he has relied on the exploration experience of working in the dungeon in order to level up. Essentially, magical disease has a cure, but it can only be treated abroad with high fees. Therefore, he is saving money in order to get himself healed. At this moment, he gets his hands on a job ad in which the Explorer Guild is in need of a strategy advisor. He is determined to become an adventurer. For this purpose, he will first get treated by equipment and join a guild. He is determined to do all of this thing one day. After a while, they are finished with the gold loading. As he carries the last load, people are talking about how they should leave immediately, as they might get caught in the dungeon if high-level adventurers exceed the portal level, which would result in an increase in the dungeon level. For them, it won't be possible to handle level 20 monsters. While doing his work, our hard-working hero turns to another side. With a curious expression on his face, he senses powerful magic coming from a certain room and concludes that it must be because it is the room of the boss monster. He is now looking in that direction intently. However, he knows that they are about to leave the portal. What he senses makes him wonder what there are two bosses in this dungeon. Suddenly someone attacks him from the back, and he falls down. His companions protested that the person who attacks him explains that it is because their so-called president ordered them to take special care of Chum while in pain. He doesn't understand what Shihan's problem with him is because he hasn't done anything to offend him. On the other contrary, he has done anything to provoke him. His new bully strides forward with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for finding the perfect parking spot and proceeds to lecture Chum on the sheer horror of having a magic disease. He also adds that it was boss's brilliant idea to see Chum off, even goes so far as to say that his boss indirectly told Chum that people like them don't have the right to breath. And despite his blabbering, Chum goes ahead. His companions try to stop him, but he doesn't listen to them and keeps walking like a man on a mission, completely tuned out to their protests. This new person, with all the glee of a villain in a B-grade movie, is ready to use the highest level of magical skill to finish him off in one go. This dude, too sadistic enough to tell our guy about his diapers. A local plan, as if explaining it to him will somehow make the spectacle even more satisfying. It's like if this villain wannabe is trying to say to our guy to watch closely how he is going to meet your end. All the while, Chun remains unperturbed, as if he's heard this kind of melodramatic nonsense one too many times. After hearing the sadistic claim, he now understands what she meant when he said that he would help him. CM thinks that someone like RMC, who struggles to survive in this magical society with a magical disease, should just die to end their misery. The thought of these self-righteous bullies playing judge and jury with others lives infuriated our dear guy to the core. He has infuriated to think that these people consider themselves divine entities because they can play with and judge other people's lives without mercy. With this thought, he steps forward. Another scene shows the real reason she has enmity against Chung. It has shown that the news policy of the association is too concerned about the increasing competition between adventurers. In order to tackle this problem, they are going to train lower-level adventurers. Meanwhile, we seen in a car with a lady he who might hire someone to clear out the trash, i.e. lower level people. She agrees with her, saying that trash should be thrown out and no one will care about it. However, the lady is concerned about the association officers, but he shakes off her concern. He easily states the people who shouldn't have the right to live like low level people won't survive after today, while showing a mercy. A soulless scene of Chun with misery on his face. While his bully is about to kill him, he looks at the magical attack, called Fireball, which is a level 3 magic skill. He understands that the reason the bully is using this level of magic skill is that they want to torture him instead of finishing him off, and one blow he tries to dodge it because he knows that even though this Fireball is level 3, its strength Lord, the villain is quite annoyed to see him still alive. Our tough dude is still clinging to survival, his heart in shambles, and blood spewing from his mouth. As seeing the sorry state, the villain decides it's time to end his suffering. He tosses our guy onto the ground like yesterday's garbage, and just for good measure, gives his head a solid kick while Chun is still busy coughing up blood. The villain is quite sadistic and laughs at his situation, because at first he thought that our helpless hero was seriously trying to counterattack, but this is not the case. Meanwhile, our MC is in great pain, while a question arises in his mind about whether he has done something wrong to end up like this. Even as he is dying without gaining any power, it feels like other souls are also listening to his helpless cries. They answer with their own questions like why they were killed. They also remark how they were killed. Even while resisting, they taunt the common perspective that people like them who haven't even reached level 10 don't have the right to live. In the end, our guy has only one question in his mind, which is why is his and decided by others when it is his life. Meanwhile, something strange happens in the dungeon they are standing in. There is an abnormality in the dungeon. And now the dungeon boss monster has been replaced with the hell level. The villain looks back after sensing something. There are two monsters standing who have come out from their base. Although he is losing consciousness, he feels like he has seen the Grim Reapers in front of him. He is right, as these monsters are none other than the Black and White Soul Reapers. After a while, are not so dead here. Lo finds himself surrounded by darkness and doesn't understand his whereabouts. While he's curious about a situation, a voice announces the entry of a new player. He immediately turns towards the source of the voice. The voice tells him to proceed with something. There is a strange miniature shrine in front of him. He observes carefully and concludes this is where the voice might be coming from. He put his hand inside the shrine as it feels like there's something inside. However, he cries out in pain as that something must have bitten him. The thing that emerges from the shrine and accuses him of poking at while calling him a pervert. Chun is too stupefied to see a talking broom. It turns out, though, that this thing is a pen, and it's absolutely outraged at being mistaken for a household cleaning tool. The pen then congratulate him for activating a system. John doesn't understand a thing. The mighty Pina saying he asks about the place he is now and expresses how empty it is. The pen, the word empty. And Chong doesn't realize that he's standing on the gate of the underworld. Upon realizing this, he is petrified to see it's true. There is a gate of ghosts beneath them. It must mean he is dead. He is terrified to realize that he is indeed dead. After remembering how he was killed in the dungeon, he starts to cry vigorously after realizing that everything he had planned for his life, so hurting from treating his disease, has come to this. The pen nervously reminds Chun that this place is public, so he should keep his wailing down. Imagine a public space for ghosts where they could walk around for relaxation, and here's Chun disturbing their peace because he's now one of them. What a joke. Despite the pen's reminder, John keeps crying for his last life in which he had dreams of leading an ordinary adventurer's life, as if anything about being an adventurer could be considered ordinary. The pen tries to console him awkwardly by saying that his life was already too harsh, so there's no need for him to live at all, so it's better to die. This pen of the dead has a weird sense of humor. However, it gets tired after a while and reminds Chun that he needs to go somewhere, and so he should just up crying. Now seeing his confused expression, the pen tells him to just follow it. As they move ahead with our dear dead hero trailing behind the weird pen with the tired expression, he asks what will happen to him after his death. Instead of answering him, the pen dryly remarks on how easily he's accepted his death. They soon arrive at a very dark place, and the pen says they reach their destination. Chain tries to ask more, but the pen interrupts, saying he'll know everything soon. Afterwards, a fire is ignited around them, and the pen informs him that this is the trial room, and Chon needs to follow it. He remarks that the place seems like a palace of a giant king. While observing the grandiose design, the pen reminds him of his place as he gods at the palace, like some cunt. A reed bumpkin. He proceeds and suddenly stops as he realizes that this place bears a striking similarity to the dungeon. His eyes catch a glimpse of a shiny costume, and he asks about it. The pen informs him that it's the body of King Yamada. Sees the darkened rays emanating from the edge of the costume and comments that he has heard this name before. Seeing how last he is, the pen finally tries to explain everything to him. It starts by saying that the dead who come here go through a trial to judge the deeds they've done in their lives. After the final judgment, the evil ones go to hell as punishment for their deeds. Therefore, King Yamada is someone who conducts this judgment and rules over the underworld. He is also someone who commands numerous ghost soldiers and demons. After listening to this, his eyes widened with realization, as this was the lesson he had learned. King Yamada was someone who writes the lifespans of the living beings with a pen. This pen seems like the pen he has just met. With a baffled expression, he turns to the pen disbelief and his tone about the death of the ruler of the underworld. However, the pen emphasizes that dead means dead. But Chung shakes off the statement as nonsense. The pen informs him that if he doesn't believe it, he can read it for himself. While showing him some writing on the wall in front of him, he looks at the writing, but it seems to be in another language he doesn't know, so he asks the pen to explain it. Suddenly he stops as he realizes that, as strange as it seems, he can't understand the language. He understands that it is the engraving, and the torn part of the wall must be the mural. He looks at the engraving, which shows numbers of soldiers and their king fighting against someone. He concludes King Ya must have been fighting against someone. The next picture shows the beheaded form of King Jammer. He understands that King Jammer was killed during the war he had initiated. Now his remaining a body without a head is buried there. For some reason, epitaphs and murals are engraved, and a barrier is set up to protect the king's body. Then his eyes turned to the engraving, which is full of the king's resentment towards someone he doesn't know. Suddenly he understands it is the war between the ruler of the underworld, but he is still in disbelief. At this moment, a mission appears in front of him. This mission involves a quest in which he has to find the real head of King Jammer, and he could get a legendary potion called Main Pose Potion as his reward. With this reward, he could eliminate his illness. He has unlimited time to complete this task. He asks the pen about it. The pen informs him that it is his form of trial which will help him get back to his life. He has shocked to hear this and questions how the pen told him that he was dead. The pen nervously explains that he has half dead despite the fact that he has accepted his demise so easily. After hearing this, he punches the pen hard and turns to the screen with renewed determination. Now he starts to comprehend the situation. He is not dead at all, so he might be in the dungeon. He considers this fishy mission, doubting whether he is really going back to life after completing it. Then he looks at the mission's rewards and concludes that as he doesn't have much of a choice, he might as well accept the mission, as there is a chance for the strange potion to treat his illness. After all, beggars can't be users, so he accepts this mission. As soon as he clicks the yes button, multiple ugly and terrified looking heads come out from the system and start roaming around him. At first he doesn't understand these things, but then realizes these are the heads he has to separate you. Almost head from the pen informs him that he has to select one head from them as his trial has begun. Chung comments dryly that these heads are piled up like a mountain, and it seems impossible to find one head among them. Sensing his misery, the pen starts to laugh, saying it shouldn't be easy since it's a trial. At this moment he is ready to tackle the challenge and starts to examine them one by one. Keen and now has an ugly-looking kid's head in his hand, and comments that some of the heads don't seem to belong to the ruler of the underworld. He is still at a loss about how he's going to find the right head in the sea of heads. The pen asks about his plan. Chung thinks about online dungeon games, where there's usually a clue in the dungeon to solve puzzles. Now he doesn't have any idea about the hidden the rules or hints to solve this puzzle. He looks at the engraving records where the current situation of King Jammer is depicted and understands that he needs to check the script for a clue. Meanwhile, the pen asks if he's an expert adventurer. He tries to shut it up as he needs to focus. A pen no need to sprinkle salt and is already bruises life. Suddenly he gets an idea and smiles widely. The pen is desperate to know what secret he has uncovered. He shakes his head to reject the idea. The pen tries to encourage him to share his thoughts, claiming to know the answer. However, instead of giving it any heed, Chung turns back and selects a head, stating that it is the head of the ruler of the underworld. He reaches this conclusion because the scriptus drives a large scar on his face and suggests that he still looks angrily at his enemy. Therefore, this head matches the description in the record. He turns to the pen and asks if he's right. The pen ambiguously answers that he will find out for himself. When he turns to the head again, one of its eyes start to glowing purple. Suddenly, There was an explosion, and he has thrown back the pen, now mocks him saying he got the wrong answer. John doesn't understand where he went wrong. He inspects the inscription, and realizes it didn't mention whether the head was human or not. Apart from those two things, and he thinks there must be something else that could help him at this moment. The pen starts to announce a secret to reward the player's hard work. He deadpans that the trial has a time limit. This leaves him petrified for a moment. The pen continues saying that the time duration depends on how long it takes for the black and white impermanents to eliminate the people on the upper deck. Engine. He explains further that when he was killed in that dungeon, it accidentally triggered the activation of the system, which has preset rules. These rules involved the black and white impermanents eliminating everyone involving the death of the player. Means our guy Chun, the usual target of the Saw Reapers, is the monsters, and they are designed to kill those monsters who were supposed to kill him. As suppression, he asks for further explanation. He realizes with dread that his friends and companions might currently be fighting the dangerous Saw Reapers. Now he understands that he doesn't have the time he once thought he had. He must hurry to save his comrades from death. Afterwards, he is desperately running here and there, checking every head. He needs to hurry. He chants a mantra in his mind while looking at every head. Suddenly he finds a head with a cap matching the costume body Kanyamai had been wearing. He reaches out to this head, exclaiming that he has finally found it. But as soon as he touches that head, there's an explosion, and he is now buried in a swarm of heads. After a while, he regains consciousness and hurriedly asks how long he was unconscious. The pen informs him it has been 20 minutes in. Erasing has worry, and as a cherry on top during this process, he has also triggered a trap. This trigger increases the number of heads. The pen informs him that his time is almost up, as he has only 2 minutes to complete his trial and a chance to live. Suddenly he starts to laugh. The pen is confused as he is mad state. He states with a maniacal expression that he now understands this game of the half-dead. Besides, he is already uncertain about some potion that could cure his disease, but it's nothing but a dark joke. The pen seems quite nervous listening to his babbling, and even remarks that he has gone mad. However, ignoring the accusation, our boy seems like he has finally awakened. He now remembers the online strategy guide he frequently read. This guide mentions the dark dungeon, the rules which revolve around playing dirty mind games. These rules involve mutual slaughter and toying with the mind. For this purpose, they give hope and despair at the same time. So in his case, he was given so many heads to make him desperate, but there was no right answer among them. This game is nothing but a way to mess with his mind. The real answer, the ultimate truth, is that they are playing with his mind. With this thought, he falls down and sits in disappointment. The pen, observing his expression, encourages him not to give up. It yells at him that he shouldn't give up, as this is his chance to come back to life. He answers with despair that he doesn't care if he comes back or not. And not the pen keeps trying to encourage him not to give up. However, his mind is still consumed by the term dark jokes, a hot topic in online discussions. This cruel concept involves the dungeon's habit of playing with minds like a British ruler. The cruel side of the dungeon, as clever as it uses the divide and rule tactic, this often leads players to kill each other. Either if that isn't the case, then it presents unsolvable puzzles or trials making players die and despair. This whole disappointing melodrama seems like some kind of demon puppeteer toying with its puppets. Aka players enjoying its own show while making the players miserable. He finally thinks in despair about how stupid he was to believe he had a second chance. Then he looks at the pen, in which is rolling around at full speed. At first Chung thinks it's because the pen is in a hurry, but he quickly rejects this thought because the pen seems excited about something. However, he shakes off every thought, figuring it's none of his business. Then he looks at the pentagon, and it seems like it's in pain. It also says be careful to someone. At first Chung thinks it's directed at him, but then realizes that can't be true. After all, he's just sitting there drowning in his own misery. Misery is indeed dangerous, but no one's going to shout at him to be careful about it. It's not like misery is going to shoot him. He then observes the floating heads and wonders why they are still floating. He knows they had been floating because of the impact of explosion shockwaves, but once those subsided, they should have been still. He doesn't understand why they are floating without any reason. This time he touches one of the heads and thinks it feels like storing water with leaves floating on the surface. His touch on the water has affected them, making them float again. His thought process pauses for a moment as he remembers the image of a Styx during water, and then he recalls the pictures of King Yam. His head. He also remembers the engravings which were filled with resentment and the scorn of King Jammer towards someone. At this moment his eyes widen and realization, however, Ever instead of just guessing he's determined to experiment, he looks up and tries to find the position of something, then he starts climbing the wall, determined to reach whatever it is. Suddenly there's another explosion, and the pen yells at him, asking what he's done this time. Nervously, he asks if he's made a mistake. The pen, now furious, reminds him that he's done it again and again. And then meanwhile its mind is cautious, trying to stop him as it thinks he must find something soon. Then it tries its trick and starts talking to him nicely, saying that he has already given up, so why is he messing with things again? It even encourages him to give up completely, suggesting it would be better for him to reincarnate, as he might get a better life next time. Chunks. While he asks why it's being so nice to him, it fumbles and says it has always been gentle with him, even going so far as to call him little brother. However, the pen is desperately praying for Chung not to move so much and suddenly turns his head toward the reel had placed behind him. It wants him to waste time, so the clock and run out. Noticing the panic state of the pen, RMC concludes that he must have found the answer. He knows that he can find key hints from the engravings and murals on the wall to locate King Yam. His head, however, while focusing on them, he might ignore another crucial detail that could make this puzzle unsolvable. The first hand he had overlooked was the title of his trial, which mentioned that it was a solo mission. His first impression of the mission was that it involved magical ways to protect the body of King Jammer. Besides, he had dismissed the text because he couldn't read it, but the last words stuck in his mind, which involved something like King Yamai going hand in hand with someone in the past. Therefore this trial was meant for the person mentioned in the text, as they were the ones who had a history with King Yammer that had remained hidden behind the player's own head to prevent him from finding it. Dang it, in this way King Ya almost set a death trap for the player. He then looks around, determined to find the head, and realizes one last step remains. With it, he looks at King Yamai's body and considers a method to retrieve the head, which has placed exactly behind him. He also thinks about the giant body of King Yammer as it is described in mythology. Then he considers how to solve the puzzle. Climbing is not an option because of the risk involved. His train of thought shift toward the old friend King Mai had gone hand in hand with, and he wonders if the puzzle could be solved by this person mentioned in the text. He ponders whether this dear person to King Mai holds the key to solving the puzzle. Meanwhile, after observing his new determined state, the penny yells at him that he has already given up, so there's no need for him to get involved. Besides, it wants Chung's time to run out, so he will eventually die. Suddenly Chung looks at the pen with a triumphant expression, which makes the pen even more nervous. He declares that he has finally found something the enemy would never do, which is to show courtesy with newfound determination. He had toward King Yama's body. The pen shouts behind him, asking if he saw the trial, but Chung royally ignores it, fixing his eyes on his goal. He then shows courtesy to King Yam as head, placing it on his own head, hoping it will reveal itself to him. However, it doesn't work at all. Now he tries to think of another way to convince King Yammer and solve the puzzle. His mind it goes to the fact that King Gamma is not just any ordinary man, but the ruler of the underworld. With that in mind, our polite hero goes to his knees and bows before King Yam as body. Addressing him with the utmost politeness, he respectfully requests the chance to return to life, even though he doesn't know for whom the trial was truly meant, for at that moment his golden screen happily graduates him for successfully completing the mission. As a result, his reward in the form of mung posts soup begins to take effect. Magic starts to swirl around a very happy Chang, who now understands that he has finally rid himself of his magical illness, as the magic no longer hurts him. His green flash is once again now bearing the title, The Old Friendship Promise. The notification informs him that he has completed his mission and obtained the reward, and he is now offered an internship in the underworld. He looks at the screen with confusion and wonders whether it involves any hidden job. While he has pondering on the job, the pen fumes with anger and even threatens to eat him alive. He nervously turns to the pen and asks politely if there is any need for it to be that angry. At this moment he ponders whether he should apologize to the pen, as it seems like it doesn't want him to solve this puzzle. And maybe our guy's death will please this pen of judgmental. However, the pen is more than serious and devours our baffled hero. Now the dear brush or judgmental pen, who turns out to be a female, is shown in front of Lord Jammer, where she expresses how good she is as the civil servant of the underworld, and how she takes care of the trials which have been successful. She even boasts about serving as the so sexy secretary as well. Then she complains about being responsible for the newcomer, which she feels unfair. However, she hurriedly adds that she will handle everything for the sake of the organization. King Armet says something to her which she requests Jammer to reconsider. With that she starts shouting that he wouldn't dare to do something. At this moment the thought process shifts to our unfortunate not so dead play A player who might see someone so tall there, however he is losing consciousness at this moment. Someone addresses the pen, asking it to literally puke our player from her mouth. The voice seems to belong to King Yama, who has lost his successor, and is now hunting for one. However, it seems like he has gone through many trials in the hunt for his successor. Therefore now he has a plan to bet everything on our guy, and his poor fate. Now the story is going to take new turn. It is said that adventurers were the wealthiest people in this world. And not only as their wealth valuable, because it is also earned through the risk of their lives. Now in this world full of adventurers and risk-involved professions, there is a large crowd of people gathered in front of a particular portal. Usually, whenever the portal opens, people gather around it because they are concerned about their loved ones on the other side. Sometimes the situation is so dire that if someone finds the whole body of their loved one, it should be considered a fortune. Now finally we see our guy, who has only seen darkness, and he is requesting that arrogant and gluttonous pen to let him out. Some woman when he opens his eyes, he finds himself lying in the cold box. Now he understands why he is in the morgue. As soon as he spots the pen, he punches her hard. The pen shouts at him, asking how he could punch her after waking up nervously. He explains that at first he thought he was dreaming a nightmare, though it's also true that the pen was trying to eat him before he wake up there. He then contemplates, is such a way he understands that the association safety officer realized what happened when no one came out of the portal. It means they must be dead at the hands of the Grim Reapers. While he was busy with the trial, he then asks the pen if there are any other survivors besides him. The pen answers that there are only two. Then the pen points out that the most crucial thing now is for them to get out of the morgue, and they can discuss everything later. He agrees with the pen and rushes outside, or a doctor is dragging a stretcher, thinking about why he has to go back and forth to collect injured people as the association sends them. The doctor even thinks about how tired he is of all these chores. However, the doctor sighs with relief, as this is his last delivery, and after it here will be free. Suddenly, he spots Chung rushing outside and tries to warn him about running in the hospital. Then the doctor asks Chung if he knows where he is. He replies by knocking him out and apologizing for it. After doing this, he is confused about what to do next. The pen shouted him, asking how he could stop and suggest he put the person aside, since it's not like the doctor is going to die. Following the pen's instructions, he set the doctor aside and rushes outside. After a while, he is outside the hospital when a girl is shown talking on the phone about the verification of the list of dead from the guild. She assures someone on the phone about it and hangs up. Afterwards, she thinks with curiosity about how an 11 portal could be dangerous to anyone. Now the chief is making things difficult for her, and she needs to clean up his mess. Meanwhile, our boy is comically looking here and there, trying not to be spotted by anyone. The girl glances behind her and Chung's direction, but doesn't find anything, which leaves her confused. After a while, our dude is finally at the door of his small department and lets out a sigh of relief. The pen complains about how small this place is and asks him to confirm if he really lives there. It even comments on how spacious the underworld is compared to this place. This prompts a dry remark from our not-so-funny guy that the rent in the underworld must be lower than here. That the pen chuckles, saying it's free for the deceased. Hired, he crashes into his bed. The pen asks about his family, to which he answers that he has none. After hearing this, the pen taunts him about his background, saying it's not possible for him to have just sprung out of Iraq. He informs the pen that when he was very young, his parents appeared inside a portal as adventurers. Afterwards, he never found peace and lingered near the portals, anxiously hoping to get into one. At that, the ever-sarcastic pen asks whether he wants her to console his pitiful self. He retorts that she should clean the toilet instead. During this conversation, his eyes stick to the screen of his phone, where he still can't find any trace of himself. After the emergence of the portals, adventurers have become such a common profession that it has subdivided into countless rare professions, like necromancer, as oracles, or charioteers. However, the thing is, these are the kinds of hidden professions that are part of history. In contrast, he knows nothing about any job in the underworld. It might be a hidden profession, like those. His mind swirls with thoughts of his unique internship he has never heard of before. Besides, he is also in a dilemma about whether he should become an adventurer or not. Maybe after the cruel treatment from other adventurers, he has given up on his dream to become one. There are other things to reconsider. For example, the risk to his life in this field is another concern, as he has died once and been reincarnated by sheer luck. It doesn't mean he has an immortal howdy potion or anything. Moreover, he now has to start from level 1, and the competition in the industry is already fierce. Not only that, there is also a chance people like Shen and his lackeys might come after him, who are against low-level adventurers. Without any significant reason, he gets his teeth thinking about those cruel bullies. He wonders about their identity and the extent of the power they hold. It is also clear that they don't value the lives of anyone besides their own. He thinks about Cheyenne, who kept hitting him just because he made him angry. By merely existing, he is now uncertain whether he would be able to survive if he faced that man again. He now fully realizes the complications of a situation. Besides, the biggest question mark is how he could survive without being an adventurer. And in this world, meanwhile, the pen is confused when he sees a broom in his home and wonders if it is something like her. Now she should understand why Chung called her a broom. On the other side, he is still in a dilemma about what to do. After the demise of his parents, he was badly bullied and didn't find a way to fit into society, so he decides to check his skills first before decide. Further, he tries to check his skills by clicking in the air, but nothing happens. It leaves him confused because he has seen others do this. He wasn't able to do it before because he was magically sick. Seeing him struggle, the pen who was making out with a broom starts to laugh, saying he can't do it. As a level 1, he reasons with her that even level 1s should have a system since they need to enter dungeons to level up. At that, the pen informs him that he was given a gift because of his rebirth. With that, a screen appears in front of him like magic is happening. The quest is quite confusing and sounds more like an order. He needs to go to the Adventurer Association with a gun in hand, but the reward is unknown. He asks the pen about this quest panel. She answers that they'll find out after they get there. He agrees, but requests that she spare his broom after a while they are inside the Adventurer Association. The pen excitedly comments on how Granted is baffled. Chung asks her to keep hidden, as someone might see her. She responds that he is the only one who can see her. He dryly suggests she should keep her voice down in this case. Then he asks about their purpose there. She excitedly replies that they are there for sightseeing, as it's been too long since she visited something catch as her eye, and she excitedly moves towards it. With Chung trying to decrease her speed, they end up in front of the awakening chamber where a boy with a shiny smile pierces his sword into a monster. He explains to the pen that whoever kills their first monster comes here for awakening. As an adventurer, she comments dryly about how it stinks, which prompts him to reply that she should just be for it. They then move to the empty side of the chamber. She asks if this large building is just reserved for awakenings. He tries to explain that they can do other things here as well. As she nervously asks whether they can eat there, he declines and explains that they can do activities related to the profession of adventurer. Suddenly, the pen starts to shiver. While looking above, she informs him that she can sense multiple portals opening. He confirms that she's right, as the association owns many portals for the first level. This way they are inspected by the association, and most of them reach the next level because of the system. This system involves the association inspecting the raids of dungeons by adventurers and making reports based on casualties, performance, and loot. In this way, numerous guilds can recruit them for internships. Our training pen is quite impressed by his knowledge, while still taunting him as he has enough knowledge for being a useless level 1. At that, he threatens to throw his broom that has kind of become her lover, which makes her grit her teeth. Meanwhile, a man in heavy armor passes by and knocks him down with a tackle. The man warns him to watch out, and her pitiful Chung apologizes without actually doing anything wrong. As the armored man walks away, he looks back at Chung with disdain after checking his skill. It then informs him about this, but he just shakes off the matter. Pen looks at his unfazed expression and comments dryly about his awful personality. Chung doesn't protest. Instead, he admits it's because he's just a pitiful level 1. Then he notices the same guy who looks nervous rather than snobbish in front of some guild manager. After witnessing it, or boy comments about him on how he now has a bow down to someone stronger. This is how the world works. Pen remarks that superior person doesn't seem like the stronger ones. He explains that it's not just about physical strength, but also about how this person will help him increase the value of his resume. Pen scoffs at the system of his world and slyly remarks that their world is going to change soon. At that moment, his system show those him a new quest. He needs to choose a dungeon at the association for his next quest, with the reward still unknown. Seriously, this hero is going to do every quest without knowing what's at stake, especially given his already poor situation. With no money, however, he's happy to oblige, as it seems like a simple task to just select a dungeon. Pen remote finds him that this is step-by-step training, because he can't have his cake and eat it too. On the other hand, he's also determined to take slow and steady steps as a level 1. After a while, it is shown that the scenario changes and he is inside the dungeon, and especially he is alone. He hurries to the pen, who tells him that it is a step-by-step process and that he is at the gate of danger. He tries to strangle her for her misinformation, making the situation quite funny. If it were not dangerous enough, now he has an unfortunate quest in front of him, who thinks that our dear Chung is capable enough to clear out the whole dungeon by himself. He desperately shakes the pen, insisting that it takes for people to clear out the dungeon. Ignoring her protests that the quest is not something she has control over, she also tries to calm him down. While being strangled by him, he protests that it is the same as before what happened in the underworld a little while before. He is standing in front of the receptionist who states his request to enter a level 3 dungeon. She asks him to choose his favorite dungeon so that she can arrange a team for him. She also adds that once he chooses the dungeon, and he will be given suitable items that could be useful in the dungeon as well as information about it in the preparation room. Meanwhile, he is looking at the screen with a confused expression. He is reading the numbers of the dungeons, and the last one is the Water Elf's Graveyard. Pen taunts how many choices he has, but he knows that he shouldn't decide just randomly because he has to consider the difficulty of the dungeon. Billy tells him that the Water Elf's Graveyard is his chosen dungeon. She requests him to head to the preparation room to get the supplies now. In the present, the pen is generous enough to give him an extra life-saving skill as compensation for his loss. Now the screen shows something titled 100 Jokes of a Brush. The task is simply to slap our dear brush aka a judgmental pen still. The reward is unknown. Now he turns darkly to the pen who was protesting that it's not her doing and insists that the quest is decided by the system. However, she warns him that his chance of a second life and the effect of the mung post soup will be undone if he abandons the quest. After listening to this, he suddenly stops and seriously ponders the situation he is in. He understands with gravity that he has no choice but to go with the flow of the system. But the good news is that the system finally decides to give him some rewards for completing his first task, which was about going to the association. With that, he activates a skill called Hellfire. With this skill, he can cook anyone without worrying about the fire being put out as it keeps burning. This special fire comes directly from the Sea of Hellfire. Not only this, but he also has another skill called Paper Man. With this skill, he can create 3 clowns which will look like him. These clowns will be created out of paper to really souls into these doppelgangers. This skill is used to cry to confusion effect against the enemy. He is beyond happy to realize that he has 3 paper men to save his life. Besides, it is more than enough to have 1 skill. Now he has 3, which feels like hitting the jackpot. Now our guy is transforming into a lucky bastard from the pitiful brat. He has no idea a simple slap to the brush would earn him such high rewards. Maybe he would have done it earlier if he knew. He has now decided to be serious about his current situation and do what he does best, which is to analyze the situation keenly. He has 2 skills and supplies: a few bottles of mana potions, some bandages, a few smoke bombs, and other basic supplies. However, the problem is that these supplies are not enough to clear out the dungeon, or according to the dungeon strategy. Besides, he likes to travel more lightly because of the danger ahead. The only strategy he can use to clear the dungeon is to avoid combat and face the monsters as little as possible. For this purpose, he has to choose his route carefully. According to the map, he realizes he is going to clear a dungeon full of water and curses the pen for choosing it. He then reads about the Water Elf Graveyard, which was once home to a water spirit, but now it's filled with erotic monsters and traps for adventurers. So he has a task in front of him given by the association. He has to collect a signal beacon from a particular location in the dungeon's maze and return safely. He wonders why the association didn't give him a task to defeat the boss monster. His incredibly brilliant mind concludes that this is the association's way of reusing the dungeon, because once someone defeats the boss monster, the portal would vanish. Over time, the association discovered that if they don't disturb our dear boss monster by opening his room door, the portal remains. This not only keeps the portal around, but also brings in a delightful variety of new monsters. So they've decided to use these portals as international training grounds for adventurers. How thoughtful of them. After hearing this explanation, the pen protests that their kind is being cheated due to this loophole. However, Chun is far too engrossed in his own thoughts to care about the pen's complaints. He's thinking of experimenting with something before moving ahead. With that in mind, he puts on his water walking boots and slowly steps onto the water's surface. These boots and gloves or magically enhanced for use in water, a luxury he couldn't enjoy before because of his magical disease. He needs to confirm if the issue is still a problem. As soon as he starts walking on the water without sinking, he shouts with joy as he is finally cured. The pen dryly questions why it took him so long to believe this fact. Now that he's confirmed his newfound freedom, he's fully ready to go. He looks at the map and spots many ruins that could serve as hiding places in this vast dungeon, so they proceed cautiously. Meanwhile, while examining the map, the pen complains about how poorly the map was drawn by the association officers, because of course this is a high-class organization. As they continue, he feels like they're on a sightseeing tour. If not for the looming danger of monsters, then he spots his mischievous pen, who decides that playing with starfish in a dangerous dungeon is a brilliant idea. He warns the pen that she'll be eaten if she gets closer to them, and she learned her lesson when one of them tries to eat her, thinking eating a brush can be a good idea. After a while they spot a soul fragment of a frog. This type of saw magic is used for surveillance. After casting a soul into it, he wonders who could have done such a job, as he seems like the only adventurer there. As they move forward, he's getting increasingly satisfied by the lack of monster encounters. He figures there's a good chance they might clear this dungeon smoothly if things don't go south. At that exact moment, his nemesis, the says Edum, decides to ruin his happiness. Now he's assigned the delightful task of defeating a monster, because the system dubs him as the one-man army. He grumbles about his rotten luck, and blames the stars, or rather the system, for his misfortunes, while the poor brush, who's already had her fill of his complaints, gets caught in the crossfire. Chun even accuses her of reporting his progress to a system which conveniently overlooked his efforts to clear the dungeon without taking any damage. The brush vehemently denies this accusation, but who's listening with no other choice, he lets her go, and sets out to find a monster. To his surprise and luck, he spots a duck monster. They are something which is found in packs. Finding one alone is like winning the lottery. As soon as the monsters spots him at bolts, our eager adventurer rushes after it, fearing that if it gets away, it might call its friends and create even more trouble. He notices a wooden whistle around its neck and decides to destroy it as his priority number one. Activating his hellfire skill, he's reminded that this fire comes straight from hell, so he better aim carefully, but with a target so small, aiming is no easy feat. The brush chimes in, suggesting he use the skill with his weapon. He summons a weapon and attaches the hellfire to its edge with his thin sword. Now ablaze, he takes a shot at the duck monster. The brush congratulate him on choosing the right weapon, noting that a long sword might have made hitting such a small target much harder. He also praises his hellfire a skill, noting that it keeps burning even in the water. The downside is that it will continuously drain his mana while it's active. While examining the despairing form of the duck monster, the pens are just letting it go, as it seems to be begging for mercy. Chon is taken aback. This is a dungeon after all, and monsters aren't supposed to beg. Nevertheless, he shows no mercy, and finishes the monster off with a dead serious look. He thinks that it's a dungeon, and begging in front of an enemy is pointless. The brush comments that he's going to lose his life if he doesn't complete the mission. Jury towards that he'll use her as a toilet brush if she keeps up her insolence. Meanwhile, he checks his mana, which is now almost depleted and half. He's surprised at how much mana he burned on a will attack. Taking a man replenishment potion, he covers his mana reserves, though not completely drained. He's cautious, knowing he might not have time to replenish it in the middle of a battle. As they proceed, the pen questions his choice of weapon, calling it a toothpick due to its thin edge. She wonders why he didn't use a long sword or a dagger. He explains that it's a rapier and he chose was it because he's not proficient with heavier weapons. Its lightweight makes it more suitable for him. However, he doesn't understand why the quest isn't marked as complete after killing the duck monster. The answer arrives promptly when the duck monster blows the whistle, alerting its companions. He realizes with dread that he missed the vital spot. With the quest completed after the duck monster's death, a new problem arises, as a swarm of duck monsters has arrived. In response to the whistle, the pen protests, claiming they should have hit harder earlier because now they are in trouble facing the swarm of duck monsters. Our boy's tense about his next strategy. He wonders if he can withstand so many monsters with his current level of firepower. What if it runs out? He fears he might be overwhelmed. Suddenly, he spots something and starts shouting that he's found a way out in front of him, or a number of jigsaw puzzle pieces, and he tries to pick one.